All right, this video is probably going to be a little bit out of date by the time you guys see it, but the inevitable seems to have happened, all right? So this is an article posted by Forbes. The Acolyte has officially been cancelled. I wish I could say I never saw that one coming, but man, it was going to happen. All right, so we're going to talk about it for a minute, and I'm going to give my thoughts and opinions, seeing as I was pretty vocal about how I felt on the first couple of episodes, and I just never followed up with it because I didn't see the point, honestly. I watched the whole series, and normally I'm one of the people that I feel like if there's nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. In this situation, I feel like I have something valuable to kind of add to this discussion. So let's have a read. We're going to go through Forbes, and then we have Deadline, which is the original article. This was the one that posted the news. Right now, everybody is processing or celebrating Disney canceling The Acolyte, the ambitious but expensive and barely watched series that created a culture war firestorm not seen since The Last Jedi. It was definitely a very controversial show, and I think that there was so much hate around the lesbian elements and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, I don't see that as an issue, right? I think that if there's a way to make those characters, that sexuality, anything like that, you can weave it into the story in a way that is organic and truthful and honest, and it actually adds something to it, right? And representation is a great thing. I feel like it's essential in this day and age where we're all hating on each other for one reason or another. They did it in a way that it didn't make sense. One of the main reasons people hated this show was the fact that it did away with the history, the lore of Star Wars, things that we have grown up with as fans over the last 9 movies and however many TV shows, right? So I don't blame Star Wars necessarily, or I don't blame the fans for hating on it, but I don't think that, going through and blaming it specifically on a sexuality or something like that wasn't the issue. The issue was that they didn't give a shit about the lore or the characters. The writing was god-awful. It was terrible, beyond belief. We've already had Leslye and some other people from Team Disney saying that was why it failed, and the bigots were ganging up on Disney. It's not the case, in my opinion. But behind the scenes, there is now a story that stretches beyond that. One that feels like Disney is almost pulling out of live action, high-budget Star Wars shows on Disney Plus altogether. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I'm glad personally that we are moving back into the era of movies rather than TV shows. I think there's still place for TV. The Mandalorian season 1 or 2 was some of the best Star Wars content that I think we've ever gotten. You have to find a way of putting it in organically without sacrificing content with the movies, which, we haven't had a good Star Wars movie in how many years? Daniel Rickman put this together, and he's right. We are now at a low point where, yes, future Star Wars movies are finally being developed again, but Disney Plus shows, ? They feel like they're skidding to a stop with only one confirmed series moving forward now out of the half a dozen we've seen. This is another big issue with Disney and the way that they've been doing things, right? We've seen it with Marvel. We've seen them announce God knows how many movies and TV shows and projects, and we get hyped for them, excited, and then most of them kind of fade away. Marvel haven't been too bad about that, but they announce so much at once and just never deliver. Star Wars, they announce it, not much has come to fruition, and when it has come to fruition, I'm a bit lackluster, to say the least. The Acolyte has been cancelled, correct. Okay, so that's fine. We can move on from that. We've got some plot holes and some damage control that we need to go over in a minute, but the upcoming Skeleton Crew is a limited series. I don't know how I feel about Skeleton Crew. I think that there is an audience for that. There's a lot of stuff, and you can go and watch my trailer reaction to it. There's a lot of stuff that is strange about it, to say the least, and I think it's going to bum. I don't want it to. I want there to be good Star Wars projects, but I just don't think the audience is going to react to it as well as they hope. Andor was always meant to be a 2-season show and will end after the upcoming season 2. I would love to see more of it. Andor season 1 was very good. I don't think it was as great as people hyped it up to be, but it was good. So if it ends on season 2, that's fine. I can accept that. Obi-Wan Kenobi may have Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen itching to make it a more than a limited series, as they've said, but there have been no official movement on that. I think it's absolutely crazy to me that The Acolyte got an insanely large budget. Meanwhile, the OGs and the people that like it or lump it, fans come for fan service. We want to see our favorite characters come back. It's always been that way in books and games and movies. We want to see Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker come back, and I think Hayden Christensen Christensen is definitely going to be in some kind of future series and things like that, but it's still crazy to me how they treated that show, the budget they gave it, the fact that they messed with Obi-Wan's character so much. We got some really good scenes though, you know, the final battle between Vader and Obi-Wan, that was very well done. But again, in terms of writing and story, it felt lackluster. Book of Boba Fett was received terribly and will not get a season 2. That's obvious and that absolutely sucks. But I wouldn't want to see a season 2 of that Boba Fett, right? I want to see the Boba Fett that we all knew and loved from the movies that we fell in love with as kids. Planned Donald Glover Lando series is now a movie. Planned Mandalorian spin-off Rangers of the New Republic was cancelled, likely in part. This is one that I'm not too well versed in. I don't know the ins and outs of this whole debacle. I'm not going to take sides on this one, but I wasn't even aware that was going to be a thing, a Mandalorian spin-off. I think that Mando is a great character, but if we start treating Mando as the centerpiece of the Star Wars universe and using him to build these branches rather than the Skywalker saga, like, okay, we've had enough of the Skywalkers, let's expand that. If we keep going further out, yes, there's a big galaxy and so much lore in Star Wars that we can expand upon, but I feel like if you go too far, it's going to be hard for fans to keep jumping over those hoops and keeping up with the characters and how are they linked together and stuff like that. I'd be open to it if it was done well. I just think that you want to make things as simple as possible for the fans. Then there's The Mandalorian, where it's unclear if season 4 will actually come into existence after the Mandalorian and Grogu film is released. We don't have enough details to know whether it could end up as a finale for their story or if season 4 is for sure going to happen. And then there's a little bit about Ahsoka. This is the only show we know for sure is getting a second season, and no other live-action Star Wars shows have been announced. Star Wars is just in such a weird place at the moment. Like, I want to be excited for Mando and Grogu. Love the two characters, but after the third season, it feels like I'm not even, I don't want to pay that price for admission because the third season was just so terrible. Ahsoka, I feel like, was really great, and we've got the Heir to the Empire stuff possibly happening at some point in the future, which I think would be great if it does happen, but it's just so hard to actually feel excited about any of these projects that have been announced or rumored to be happening. And this is where it all leads back to the Acolyte, right? Because the Acolyte is Leslye Headland's baby. It is everything that she wants Star Wars to be and to stand for. And I feel like poor reception of that is a representation of fans aren't getting that communication. They don't feel the same way. They're not connecting with the same messages. There's nothing wrong with that representation, but it's the fact that you're overruling the story and the character development, everything that we know and love about these characters in this franchise for the sake of that representation. That is the issue. And the fact that the writers are creating these stories that feel so bland and mundane and just unwatchable, unreadable. And it's not even a case of boycotting Disney, saying that Star Wars is terrible in comparison to X, Y, and Z. It's not like that. It's literally just a case of if your fans are not enjoying your content, something has to change somewhere. And that's the bottom line. If you don't have an audience that likes what you're creating, then what are you even creating for? So we'll move on to the original Deadline article announcing that the Acolyte Season 2 was not going to be happening. And as we have a little scroll down, I haven't read any of this, by the way, so we'll read through it together. The story of the Acolyte will not continue, with Lucasfilm opting not to proceed with the second season of the Star Wars offshoot starring Mandala Stenberg. I'm so terrible at pronouncing names. Word of the decision comes more than a month after the 8-episode first season of the series from the creator, director, and executive producer and showrunner Leslye Headland wrapped its run on Disney+. The news is not entirely surprising. The Acolyte did okay with critics, 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, but divided Star Wars fans, which was reflected in its overall viewership. I can agree with that and say that I have not seen discourse in the way that the Acolyte received it about any other Star Wars project. In all of my time on social media, following everything that Star Wars has been doing, even in the Marvel Universe, of everything we've been experiencing with the multiverse saga and She-Hulk and all these strange offshoots of things that we love, I've never seen an audience or a fan base react to something the way that they did with The Acolyte. Driven by its interest into the variable space franchise, The Acolyte got off to a strong start when it launched on June 4th with 2 episodes generating 4.8 million views in its first day. I can't help but feel like that's low. Like 4.8 million views is not a lot. I know it's just first day views, fine, it'll accumulate over time, but like looking at those numbers, I wouldn't look at something and think, oh, that's gonna make bank. That's worthy of like $180 million worth of budget. That doesn't make sense to me. Although saying that, generating 4.8 million views on its first day as a streamer to rank as the biggest series premiere on Disney+. The tally rose to 11.1 million views globally after 5 days of streaming. Yeah, a month down the line, you're probably looking more like 100, 200 million views, something like that. So makes sense. But 4.8 million views for one of the biggest franchises in the world on the first day, meh. But the Acolyte could not sustain the momentum, dropping off the top 10 in week 3. If we go through another couple of articles, I'm not familiar with many of these sites. They aren't my go-to for news and reviews and all that, but like we just got hit pieces like Rip to the Lesbian Space Witches, starring diverse and LGBTQ cast members following a bigoted backlash. It wasn't a bigoted backlash. There were people doing that, don't get me wrong, I'm not completely oblivious to it, but for me, that wasn't the issue with the show. It was the writing, it was boring, it was terrible to watch, it was mundane. It went against everything that Star Wars is and the lore of the characters like Darth Plagueis and Yari-Mundi and characters that are regimented in Star Wars history as having specific points in time, stating that things have and haven't happened, and it went against all of that for the sake of some quick little gags and gimmicks. With that said, some of the combat in The Acolyte, the fight scene with Chimera and he's taking on all the Jedi, that was awesome. That's some of the best combat we've had in Star Wars in a very long time. But moments like that, the cool action pieces, do not override all of the bad stuff. All of the other episodes we had to get through just to get to that point. This is another article, and I was just having a quick read through it between, talking segments and whatever, but Osha as a character, the emotional schizophrenia that happened with that character. 1 minute wanting to be a good character and returning to the light side and switching back, and the twin sister who was going through the exact same thing. And it was just such weird character writing. I feel like you had 100 writers, stuck them in a room, and you just picked one script off each of them, and that was the episode thing. Like, we had some moments where the character was very interesting and she knew which direction she wanted to go in, and then by the next episode switched. How are fans meant to keep up with that behavior? Like, once or twice we could deal with that, but like numerous times in every single episode, dude. To wrap it up, I feel like I'm just kind of rambling at this point. I wanted to go through some actual critics, right, who have reviewed this stuff and given their points and whatever. And a lot of it is just like, okay, so bigots brought down Disney's brand new Star Wars series. You think if we could do that, you think if we could control Disney and we could dictate what movies and TV shows that we're going to be working on next, we would have just been absolutely fine with the way that Mandalorian was going? You think we would be fine with Obi-Wan Kenobi not getting a second season or doing those characters justice? This is 100% a fault of the writers, and for whatever reason, Leslye Headland and her team at Disney, or perhaps some of the shareholders, acknowledge that it wasn't the best, that they may have had an L, but it wasn't down to the bigots speaking out about the series. It's nothing to do with that. But what's happened has happened, and while I can't sit here and say that I'm not happy that Disney is recognizing some of the ways that they're doing things and playing with these IPs and treating the fan base is wrong. I don't think it should have ever gotten to this point. And we still have a bunch of strange series and movies and stuff like that coming up soon. And, how the fans respond to those, I don't know. I think we're in for a very rough couple of years. And Leslye Headland said that she wants to wrap up her time at Disney and managing Star Wars and all that with a bang. She wants to go out with a very successful movie. And I feel like the only way to do that is to genuinely start giving a crap about the characters, the stories, the fans, and although adding in her own agenda is absolutely fine in certain situations, story is king above all else, and it is Leslie's job to make movies and TV shows and all that kind of stuff that fans are going to connect with, and you can't do that without good story. Add in whatever the hell you want to add in the characters, add in the sexualities, the LGBT, whatever. Representation is great, but people will value a story and a good show that showcases those characters and those groups and those minorities and those sexualities in a way that is positive, far more than you making a negative show with a negative story and lackluster adventure, and then using these communities as the face for it all. That's not a good look. All we're asking is doing it in a way that values and respects this over here, the Star Wars that we all know and love. That's it for today. I was going to originally review The Crow today, and I couldn't find the time to get out, go watch it. So I figured why not sit down and talk about some serious stuff and get involved with some kind of controversy. That'll be fun. All right, I love your faces. Thank you so much for watching today's video. You're amazingly beautiful, and I will catch you in the next one.